this meeting to order. All board members are present in person. We stand for the pledge. Mrs. King, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any approval or any agenda adjustments?
No, ma'am, as presented.
Could I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So move.
Mr. Parker, second?
Second.
Mrs. King. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Okay. So we're going to talk facilities this morning, and we have to go back to some kind of just understandings first. So back in 2019-ish, a group was brought together to begin the process of redoing the CEFP, the County Educational Facilities Plan, that is required, particularly if you plan on going to the SBA for any funding to help support the needs or major projects in your county. So the group came together, and this black book that I have here in front of me that I'm going to reference contains a lot of different information that was required to be put together. In this last round, most of us were led by architectural firms that helped us put the information together. There was a lot of things that folks within the county had to pull together, bring in census data and other kinds of data. So at that time, there were a lot of projections that were put in place. So we're going to talk about projections, we're going to talk about different scenarios today, we're going to throw out some rather large figures to you today to just try to get an understanding of what has been proposed in the current approved CEFP, but then what we're going to need to think about as we move forward. So as you know, the first thing under consideration is student enrollment. Mm-hmm. It is on the decline. We have a decline in population at every school in the county. When you think about that population decline and you look at our schools and their facilities, the most concerning right now is Rock Cave and Washington District. So when you look at their enrollment, and in the CEFP, we did have to do a 10-year enrollment projection. What actual was placed in here and what exists today is very different. Mm-hmm. So when you look at Rock Cave in the CEFP, the projected enrollment for fiscal year 25 was 143. But our actual enrollment right now stands at 112.
And what was the projected?
143. When you look at Washington District, the projected enrollment was actually 137, and we're sitting at 112. Not as big as a difference, but we still do have a difference that exists in that situation. When we go and we look at all the other schools, Base, next door here, the projected enrollment was 566. It actually sits at 455 right now. French Creek, projected was 274. It's sitting at 205. Hodgesville was projected at 179. It's sitting right around and is hovering between 130 and 135. They've had some comings and goings since this was last looked into. Tenerton, the projected enrollment was 290. It's sitting at 257. Union was 302, and it's sitting at 242. The middle school was projected at 889. It's actually 718. And then Buchanan Upshur High School was projected at 986, and it really is sitting once you take out virtual. Thank you. When you sit it and you look at it there, it's only 817, which also impacts the enrollment numbers at Buchanan Upshur Middle School. The actual removing the 40 students that are in virtual would be about 685. That comes into play when you're thinking about looking at, okay, our facilities, the ages of the facilities, the costs for utilities, all of those pieces. So in looking at just that and thinking about the ages of our facilities, the next thing that comes into play is what we call the economies of scale. And this, at the time of the CEFP, back in that development time of 2019, those economies of scale are set by the SBA. So it's a formula that they use to tell us about that. You also have to consider geographic and other considerations, including transportation and times. You also have to look at your personnel that are in your buildings and how many certified personnel are in those buildings versus how many uncertified personnel are in those buildings. So at the time of this CEFP, Hodgesville, Rock Cave, and WD did not meet the economies of scale based on that formula the SBA put
Hang on
together.
a second, you said Rock Cave?
Hodgesville and Washington District did not meet the economies of scale. Then, the second thing that to go look at is program utilization. In other words, how much of the building is being used for the intended program. The desired level with the SBA is a minimum of 85%. At the time of the development of this CEFP, the high school was at 63%, the middle school was at 71%, base was at 79%, French Creek was 76. I'm sorry. Hodgesville was, at the program utilization was 92%. There's a difference, remember the economies of scale, how they look at it in this. Rock Cave was 80%, keeping in mind that at Hodgesville and Rock Cave, there's one grade level per grade. Tenerton was at 98%, Union was at 95%, and WD was at 79%. So that's just speaking to utilizing the building for the intended programs that are there for our students. So then we look at other costs. And they develop a priority list from some of those costs. So I have a handout here for you. I'll get you a copy.
No, I'm fine.
And when you look at this, on the first page there, you will see what came out of the discussions and a project priority list. So the architects put together estimated costs at the time of the development of the CEFP. Keep in mind that we went through COVID. We went through a loss of the ability to get materials to us. We've had markets that have been up and down, particularly when it comes to the construction trades. So at the time that this was developed, here is the list in priority of what they felt should be considered when you're looking at Upshur County schools. I am aware that there were many discussions that were held, and perhaps the final list that was put together may not represent everything that the committee talked about, but nonetheless, this is the list that was put forward. Looking at Buchanan Upshur High School, it would be a new comprehensive career and technical high school. And you can see at those prices, the projected cost was $62,479,000. There was also to renovate the high school for a new middle school at a cost of $9.4 million, almost 9.5. Second on the list behind those two was Tenerton with additions and renovations at $3.8 million. Rock Cave was third, additions and renovations for $5.8 million. Union with additions and renovations at 2.4, and I'm rounding. Hodgesville, additions and renovations at approximately 3.9. Academy, next door here to us, 7.2. French Creek, about 2.7. Washington District, excuse me, 2.4.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
On the high school one, career and technical high school, that's completely different and separate from our technical medical center at Fred Everett.
Right, we would maintain the CTE programs that are currently being offered at the high school. But Fred Everly would still do what they're doing, because we have programs that operate CTE at our high school, and then we also have, then they also go to Fred Everly. So we would make sure that we would maintain space in the new building for those programs.
But not for the Fred Everett.
No, Fred Everly, that's separate.
Because that seems kind of high for just what's left
It's a
over.
brand new building.
It's a brand new building.
That was the
About building
bond,
a whole brand new high
Bond
school.
that
The
failed.
The
bond that
bond
went,
that failed, right? That,
Okay, that was
One of
for
the
the,
Cadillac.
yeah,
yeah.
yes.
I got you.
Okay. So that was what the projects in an order. Now, the next page that I gave you, the next couple of pages, shows a little bit further breakdown. For the total cost for all of those projects, as they were projected, would be $99,819,166. That's a summarized total. I'm just telling you that, but we'll get to that. So what you have in front of you is actually the financing plan that has to be put together when you start talking and thinking about, okay, what are we going to take on? How are we going to finance this, et cetera? So the first part is you have to look at what is your current outstanding bond indebtedness, Even now, that stands at 0. We don't have any bond indebtedness. No project do we have outstanding that requires anything like that. Then it also looks outstanding levy indebtedness. We didn't have any then, and we don't have any now. Then you start looking down here at outstanding contracts. These are just some of the things that were at that time. Looking at some of the things that they were thinking about financing. So it just goes down through and it names all of these things for you and what that looks like. I just wanted to give you what that projection looks like. So the second page of it, which I believe is here, the cost needed for improvement by project, it just breaks it down and numbers it according to the priorities. So that I wanted you to have that out of the CEFP. So as we're thinking about what does the future hold for the county when we're thinking about facilities, while this was 2019, 2020 prices, and we know there's been an increase, at least this gives you a floor to consider about what those projected costs would be. Now, just because this is the approved CEFP does not mean that we can't go back to the table and have a modified proposal to send to the state and looking at what we think is going to happen in the future. So I didn't want you to think that this is cut in stone. It's just what is currently approved, and whatever decisions are made as we move through the future, then we would go back and we would revise the CEFP. That has to be presented to the state board. They would have to approve that modification, and then we could start going to the school building authority to ask for support.
Question. When the SBA monies are given out, is there always a stipulation that you have to have matching funds or not?
It is not a stipulation, but I will tell you that it's very difficult to receive funds if you can't put some funding up. And it's not matching.
It doesn't have to actually be matching, but it has to show good faith or something, maybe?
It has to be like 70% to 30% or 60-40. Okay? They do like for you to come to the table with some money. Now, when I went to present to the SBA to get the funding again for the Tennerton project, I explained to them, I don't have any funding.
We didn't have it when we got them, was it the roof and the settlement of the
Was
gym?
it the lighting?
Huh?
Was it the lighting?
Well, the ground,
Oh, at Tennerton.
yeah, Tennerton.
Yes,
Yeah.
they did the pillars
And
on
we
the
told, and they
foundation.
said, well, how much you gonna give? And I said, we don't have any money to
Yeah.
give.
So in the
Still got it,
presentation, I just told them, the presentation went well because the SBA, Dana Womack and Mr. Neptune, the executive director, said, Mrs. Miller and Upshur County Schools has totally kept us in the loop about the situations that are going on in Upshur County. So when she is standing here before you telling you that there's nothing to add to it, she's being forthright and honest with you. I was pleased that we were only 3 projects below the line, folks, when they did dole out the money this last time. I mean, because normally, you'd be down at the bottom of the list, but they do understand that project is one that we feel is needed due to safety. I will always advocate for the safety of our kids and our staff and families at our schools. So that kind of gives you a breakdown of what's what. Some of the things that I've been working on is knowing that there's going to be some decisions that are going to have to be made. There's no doubt about it, because we continue to lose student enrollment. I have asked, and finance has provided me with utilities and personnel costs and other things at a couple of the schools, because it was like, well, these would be the 2 easiest ones to first start thinking about. But as I'm going through this process of thinking about schools and transportation times and talking to bus drivers and other folks, you have to consider other options as well. So there's a few scenarios that I've come up with, and anyone that may be listening or listens to this afterwards, these are just scenarios. Nothing is being proposed at this time. We're not saying that anything is going to happen, but we are just looking to the future. Because, as I've said over and over again, we do have to be good stewards of the money that the taxpayers entrust us to utilize to educate our kids. And buildings is one of those things that we have to look to. So my first inclination was to look at Rock Cave and WD and figure out what could we do if we needed to close those. Well, okay, so you start pulling those utilities, personnel costs, then you start looking at transportation. You have to start looking at what are the roads that we're bringing kids down, and what is that travel time if you put kids here or if you put kids there, you close this school and you do this, that, and the other. That's probably not the best idea at this point, particularly thinking about WD.
Yes.
In particular.
Agreed.
The unfortunate thing about Rock Cave is we already have several families that have decided that they want to put their kids at French Creek. The buses are the same for both of those schools. They're 4.2 miles apart.
Yes.
So you think, well, hey, we're not program utilization as well as the building space, we're not where we need to be. So that would be one scenario. So then you have to think, well, where are you going to send all these kids? I mean, if you would close, well, WD, they're out there, but they could come to Tenerton. Well, no, not really, because then how much time are you adding on those routes? So that was one scenario that was floated around. Well, then I started thinking way outside the box. And I started thinking about grade configurations in the county, current program utilization and space in other buildings. The fact that we're staring at the old high school, that's the middle school, that the main building is 100 years old this year. They just had that really nice celebration there. So I thought, well, if we don't have the 1,600 and whatever students that the capacity of the high school was originally built to hold, is there something that we could do there and think about changing the configuration of our high school and absorbing some of the middle school at the high school? So I started looking at that and thinking that if we would combine the high school and the middle school enrollment, you're looking at about 1,500 kids. Keeping in mind that in the morning and the afternoon, 70 high school kids approximately leave for Fred Everly. So that's going to drop it a little bit more. But you can't just take the 6th grade and put them in with high school kids. So you've got to think then, so some grade configurations. So could we look at our buildings and could we come up with a pre-K 4, find some place where we just have grades 5 and 6, and then make the high school 7-12? Because then that changes some of your populations as well. So all of this is here, but we're just thinking about how that might look. So those are just some things that I've just been tossing around, and and talking to just here with people and trying to pull some of these figures and things to look to. Because we are going to have to think about doing something, but you also want to keep in mind being the least disruptive, that is not going to cost you money that you don't have and that you can't bring to the table to ask for assistance from the SBA. One of the things that I will say is we also have to think about the number of personnel that we currently do not have in our buildings that are certified. Could this reconfiguration, as well as thinking about how do we best utilize the buildings we have with possible closures, how is that going to help to remove that constantly drives us crazy, and going out and trying to find certified individuals? It would help us. It actually would help us. Is it going to take away all of them? I don't think so, but it would make a huge dent in the fact that we don't have the certified personnel that we need. So that's the standard from the CEFP. Now, I asked Tim to be here to try to kind of give us a little bit of a feeling of our facilities and what do they look like right now? What are we doing? What looks like our needs as they stand current? Because I think it's important for you all to know from building to building what are we seeing. So I'm going to have Tim talk a little bit about that with you this morning.
To put it as politely probably as I can, our buildings are aging and have been for some time. Union is our newest school and it was built in 1988. It has a new roof that's about, I believe, 3 years old now, maybe 4. And our roofing structures at the middle school are probably my biggest concern in the county. There are spaces in the 8th grade hallway, and it's my understanding, and a lot of this happened well before I was here, but my guys have markings that they will not walk on. When the roof was replaced, I guess the decking was deteriorated and it was not done properly, so the decking wasn't replaced, and so the material is basically, there's just voids under the material. So they're cautious in where they go on the middle school roof. The cafeteria area and another section beyond the cafeteria towards the gym there was all, and for whatever reason, years ago, they put spray foam roofs over top of the EPDM membranes, the rubber roofing that is typical for commercial. That spray foam was a quick answer and a cheap answer for repair. But now we're faced with a deterioration of the spray foam, could be in that corner of the room, but the water penetrates the spray foam, gets on the EPDM, and shows itself in that corner of the room where the original roof was failing. So it's hard to chase. You're chasing something from over there. You're talking about 50, 60 feet. You're not looking in the right spot. That's a big issue. This at Academy and the CEFP that she just explained and the history that I have says that the original ACEFP prior to this CEFP was to, when the consolidation happened at McCann Academy, was to remove the old section, build a new gym, continue with that particular phase, but those phases stopped, whether transition of administration, changes of views of what was important, what was needed, whatever, money. So in this old section, which used to be a boiler chiller, heating cooling, is still boiler heat, but the chiller went bad and not enough funds to replace it at the time, so it was abandoned, and that's why you have window air conditioners in this section of the academy this direction. The boiler is approaching the 100-year mark. And it's,
I believe that.
it's maintained. We take care of it, at the beginning of the year, but if it fails, we're in a real bind there. in this old section. Now, the newer part, of course, those are rooftop units, and that's a different system altogether. There are 3 heating and cooling systems in that building alone. And that's tough to manage. The boiler is obviously a big concern after roofing. After that, we're in fair shape, I would say. Our custodians do a good job of maintaining buildings, and I don't think our maintenance staff gets enough credit. I've sent guys into some situations that I didn't think we would make it through a day in a kitchen, and they're able to somehow make things work. And they've got skills that maybe aren't known or aren't necessarily, but they can make it work and patch it through until we can get what we need to repair, to make the right repair. They do well in maintaining what we've got, and sometimes on a low budget. I've tried since I've been in facilities to really concentrate on what we're able to do in-house and not contract out. There's certain things that if I send 2 guys to go do that's gonna take us 3 weeks to get accomplished, I can contract that out cheaper and let my guys go fix something in a classroom, so it's gonna be more handled and more addressed quickly for kids. Ultimately, our safety things, playgrounds are a nightmare from the standpoint of maintenance, because we've got community people using playgrounds, which is good. There's nothing wrong with it, but we receive a lot of vandalism and things like that we're repairing that just take time. We're in need. I mean, as far as facilities are concerned, I guess is a good way to state it. And I don't know how many more times we're able to continue to patch the middle school. That's going to be it's going to show its face, and it's going to be a problem. It has already. We had an issue in the cafeteria kitchen area, a complaint to the health department. We followed through. They were worried about asbestos ceiling tile. We have no asbestos ceiling tile in the county, but we have to test it in order to prove it. The MSDS sheets are not enough. They have to be tested. So, I mean, we spend a little more money doing those things just to curtail issues, I guess. But
What about the chiller at the high school?
chiller at the high school is okay right now. It is it's in the 20-year range of its end of life. It's not new by any means, and it's not going to last forever. We just had an issue again with the power supply that went bad, and it was down for a day or so, or more than that. It was about 3 days, I think, before we got the board going put in. But turnaround time on some of that stuff is, you don't know at this juncture what the lead time is on some of this equipment.
We had the drain pipes at the middle school last year too, right?
Yes, we had a sewage pipe that, and then you're talking cast iron stuff,
Okay.
and once it rusts out, and the repairs inside the walls are difficult. We had to use a company that goes in and puts a liner in. Years ago, they did it at Washington District for drain lines, but they put a PVC liner inside of the cast iron, and it goes through and expands out to the size of the pipe, and now then you have a clean surface, so you have less clogs and things like that. But right now, we've got an issue at the high school with the sewer line to the lift station. It has roots in it. We continually clear it. It's manageable, but it's going to be an expense to replace that from behind the high school in the outdoor classroom to the lift station down by the pool. It's about 100 yards, so 300 feet. And then we also have an issue at the high school with the wrestling building. I guess there's not a sewer line on Route 20 in that area, so that sewage from the wrestling building is pumped all the way around the parking lot towards the park entrance at the end of the stadium to catch a sewer line.
Oh,
Now we have a septic tank there, so we're just pumping liquid, but we have a clog in that line somewhere. So we're currently visiting that tank every once in a while when it fills up. We're getting out of wrestling season, so it's not going to be as frequent, but we had to make our way through wrestling season before we could address it. And the history of that is volunteers or boosters built that building and did the work,
Yep.
It's a great thing, but we have no plans. We have no idea where that line is. We have no idea to where to look for a clog. We have a 100-foot camera, we can't find it in 100 feet. And it goes under the road.
Did you get in touch with JP?
JP, yeah, I've not talked to JP Tenney. I did talk to
Because he was the wrestling coach that whole time, and he was instrumental in getting that built.
Tim Bragg was the one who put the line in.
Okay.
I talked to his son, because Tim's out of business now, but he was getting with his father, so we're gonna try to gain some information from those
But yeah,
people that were
JP
around.
may know where that is, because he was instrumental in getting that built.
So, those are the types of issues that are, I guess, and I always joke and I say, you know, that I'm not trained in facilities. I've learned a lot over the course of 4 or 5 years, but at the same time, I need people to break it down so I can understand it. And then when I start trying to evaluate it from a business or an objective standpoint, you've got some real issues that are showing their heads that if it were our house, we would be really concerned with.
Oh, yeah. I'm guessing, but I'm 99% sure that I'm right. Our biggest cost for a building is the middle school.
Yeah, I'd say without a doubt, other than I think some of we have VRV HVAC systems in 5 elementary schools, and those are costly to repair. They're proprietary, they're not something that Tim Leggett can just take care of and move on. The Daikin units, and then because of low bid, when the Hodgesville project was done, that's a different system, it's an LG system, so the Daikin people almost refuse to work on them. They all stay in their own lane proprietary wise. Parts are proprietary, you can't get them from anybody else, you can't get them cheaper, you can't go to Right Way and get a blower motor for
Right.
one of those.
You can't get them fast either.
No.
Oh, no.
So, but those systems are supposedly, you know, top-end technology, but they're costly.
And how long have we had them?
I know that Tennerton and French Creek are the oldest, I believe, and they just went out of warranty. They were 7 years at warranty. Warranty was 7.
So we're
in
at less
the
than
8th year.
10 years?
Yes.
Okay.
And then those systems, I'll bet you, and I just asked my secretary this morning to pull French Creeks because I'm learning about a prescriptive maintenance program that they have where they can hook a computer up and diagnose problems 24 hours a day. And you can prevent problems. The biggest failing part is a compressor. The compressor goes out. If it goes out, they're able to lock out that compressor to isolate it, and then the system will run on the other 2 compressors that are in it.
Right.
If 2 compressors go down, the whole unit's gone. But French Creek has been our biggest as far as, for whatever reason, and those things are so sensitive, we think some power issues are coming into play with that if there's a bump in the power or something like that. They have so many valves throughout the system that if it bleeds back in cooling mode or in heating mode, and they're in constant conflict with each other. If the thermostat's set at 70 and it gets to 72, the cooling kicks on. If it gets to 68, the heat kicks on, and so that it'll just keep it balanced. It brings in 100% fresh air, so back during COVID, that was a thing that was a plus. The fresh air part does not fail typically. That's because it's more like our old-fashioned blowers and motors that we had. But this computerized VRV refrigerant system is very sensitive and very tedious.
So, what questions do you all have? Or considerations that may be floating around in your head?
I think we need, as a board, the State Department, whoever's in control at the moment, or at the time, we probably need to look at closing 2 elementary schools. What those are, you know, to be determined, so to speak, but Rock Cave is, like you say, 4 miles from another school. Hodgesville is not that far to Buchanan versus Washington District when you're coming from Queens.
Queens, Cutright Chapel.
Yeah,
Hemlock. Yes, Hemlock, yes,
but,
that's way out there.
and then I was intrigued about, the move for the middle school into the high school. That would seem, if it can be accomplished, that would seem like a step we may need to consider. I'm assuming we would still keep the middle school facilities, maybe not utilize all. I mean, it's like this facility, we need a different board office, A, space, A, accessibility, other things. You know, those facilities, while not a school, may be utilized for other functions with the school system. But if we have a roof problem at the middle school, sounds like most of the roof at the middle school needs replaced.
There would be very little on that roof that I think would sustain, I mean, 10 years. You're inside of 10 years easily. I don't know if you make it 5 on some parts.
Which building between Rock Cave and French Creek are the best in condition, the least cost, the best for room?
French Creek's bigger than Rock Cave by far.
And is newer.
And is newer and.
There are no outdoor classroom spaces like there are at Rock
at
Cave.
okay.
Tennerton and Rock Cave were on this list as a higher priority because of the outdoors. The portable buildings from pre-K at Rock Cave, and Tennerton has a kindergarten and an outdoor classroom. In our portable building, trailer, like Title I building.
My title used to be.
They were put in
Elm
the
Street,
60s temporarily.
Right.
And they've stayed.
They stayed, no, cause, yeah, they stayed, trust me, they stayed.
Yeah, the middle buildings at Main Street, Stockard, were temporary back in the early sixties and were there
They were
when we
there.
left in '88
Well, yeah, they were there until
till
you
Union
guys
was
went
built.
to Union,
Yeah.
yeah.
Asbestos, we didn't even touch on. I mean, the middle school has, I forget how many thousand, 20-some thousand square feet of floor tile that are encapsulated in the 8th grade hallway. Of course, the plaster walls
Right.
are hot there. Hodgesville has the old section, the original section that before the gym or up on the parking lot end is all asbestos floor tile. I mean, of course, asbestos is not overly concerning unless it's disturbed.
Yeah.
Right. Those are, Rock Cave has some in their old section. Tennerton in their old section.
So could the high school be divided so that kids who are younger, 7, 8, 9, or whatever, separate from 10, 11, 12? That's my only concern is, I remember when the middle school came into being and people were freaking out that 9th graders were going with high schoolers, 12th graders, because, I mean, obviously, there's a significant difference between a 9th grade girl and a 12th grade guy.
Right.
I mean, there is.
Yeah,
And
yes.
so that was the big thing back then, and we were all freaking out about that, plus 6th graders being in with,
Middle school.
quote, because it used to be junior high, obviously.
Right.
And,
Yes, so there is, so folks have gone up and walked the building. They've looked at the number of empty classrooms that are there, and thinking about putting one section just for grade 7, 8. And then the high school's been talking about trying to just do like a 9th grade academy, even where you'd have the 9th grade in
By
part of
themse- right,
the
or-
building by
Yeah, you
themselves.
We did that once.
Did that years ago, it didn't
Years
work.
ago.
So people
Didn't
have
work.
revived that talk as well.
Yeah.
You know, of course, there's 2 gyms, there's 2 sets of locker rooms. Lunch, you know, you have to think about the areas that would have to be
commons
shared.
area, right.
What does that look like? What are class schedule needs? Because you're gonna have 2 bands. You're gonna have 2 choral programs. You're gonna have 2 general music programs. You're gonna have 2 art
Art
programs,
programs,
you know. So you have to think about all of those as
Right.
well. And we're just starting to explore some of these things, and we're gonna continue, because we'll continue walking, looking, talking, you know, about any scenario that we may come up with. But you've gotta start these, you do,
Well,
you've gotta
you do.
start the conversations
And
now.
brainstorming is so important
Right.
because then you start getting ideas and it's,
How many schools in West Virginia are a 6-12 or a 7-12? Do you know that?
I do not know that. I haven't gone that deep yet. Your smaller counties, counties that are smaller than we are,
Right.
I would say probably you're looking at Calhoun would be 6-12. Maybe not, maybe Tyler County, because they're getting ready to build a new elementary school there. Doddridge, of course, has what they call their complexes,
Right.
to where they've divided their kids.
Right.
Tyler and Doddridge are in different situations than any other counties are because of the influx of the gas money.
Right.
So that's really helped them in a lot of different ways. There may be some other situations, Roan, Clay, I'm just thinking those smaller counties,
Tigers
Randolph,
Valley,
Tigers Valley, 6-12, just thinking that
now
way.
transportation wise, middle school and high school kids are on the same bus anyway, is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
oh yeah, they're all,
So they're all on the same bus, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
my point,
Yeah.
that it wouldn't be that much of a difference if they just changed the location, because they're all on the bus at the same time anyway.
Do we have enough room in the elementary schools to keep 6th grade at the elementary level?
no, no.
No,
That's why I'm thinking if we had a facility where we could put grades 5 and 6, so because what that would do is that would free up space for us as a system to have more pre-Ks in our actual buildings, You see what I'm saying? So that we could have, when you look at a lot of other counties that have that PK4 set up, some of them are a 5-8 middle school set, or they're 6-8, and they go PK5,
Right.
but, and then they go 9-12. But just kind of, okay, what could we do? What does that look like? Just really kind of being creative.
I'm a huge proponent of, and I said that when we ran for the Board of Education, that we need to be out of this building. It is not handicapped accessible, it does not
Yeah.
meet many of the requirements.
Right.
And it is of value because of its location, and we own basically a city block almost here.
Mhm.
I would like to see the middle school, the old part demolished, and the 8th grade wing become the administrative buildings, and you keep the gym and potentially the cafeteria. We always need gym space.
Yes,
That is
always.
an area that we never have enough
Correct,
space for kids.
correct.
That you could keep it, it's centrally located, you've got good parking there. If you did away with the old part of the building, that's part of, I'm sure that is the part that is eating us the hardest in repairs, finances, things that you can't replace.
well, years and years ago, the idea was they were gonna get rid of this building.
Mm-hmm.
The board office was gonna be in which used to be the cafeteria part of Buchanan Academy, this first section.
Mm-hmm.
That was gonna be the board office. I don't know what happened, but it never happened.
You wouldn't have air conditioning.
True.
So,
Oh,
And
they'd
you're
have
buying
found
an
a
old
way.
boiler.
They'd have found a way then.
Going from one problem to another, doesn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. I just thought with the 8th grade wing, it is handicapped accessible in all ways, and you've got some flexibility there.
Yes.
You could even place an alternative program in that area also to move it away from others if you had to.
I think
Yes.
something to think about too is you have to think about how the SBA works.
Right.
If you think about the SBA, if you're building anything for instructional purposes, they're much more inclined.
Right, to give you money.
So, thinking outside the box again, then, what do we do across the street over here to add to it a little bit with some newer construction? And that provides you even more space, and then, not just Hodgesville, but what about other schools? What else can we close to pull in there? Just a thought. Not saying we wanna do that, but I mean, those are things to look at. Do we do something, Hodgesville's a concern with the amount of time little kids gotta spend on the bus. So then, we have landlocked Tennerton.
How,
What do we do with that?
How-
You see what I mean?
how far towards town do Hodgesville kids come? how far towards
Turkey
town
Run.
do
Turkey Run.
Hodgesville kids
Turkey
go
Run.
to?
Turkey Run.
Turkey Run, and then they turn and go back, okay.
From Turkey Run,
So truly,
South.
they're closer
yeah,
to
Hodgesville.
base than
Right.
they are to Hodgesville School.
Those on Turkey Run.
Those on
would
Turkey
be,
Run.
Yes. Yes.
Now, the other thing that we also have to consider, and Rick reminded me of this the other day, and it just totally slipped my mind, but there is some additional construction that's gonna start out Brushy Fork area too. There's some additional construction that's gonna happen there that's gonna be family units. Someone's getting ready to do some things there. So what kind of a shift will that make happen as
Those are
well?
base kids, correct?
Some are, some go to
Some-
Tennerton.
I was gonna say,
Tennerton,
those
The
are
Tennerton.
trailer
Tennerton.
court out there goes to Tenor.
Yeah.
So I would think those
Yeah.
kids.
Meadowlands.
So, those are considerations too, but,
Wait, where are they building those, on Stony Run or Brushy Fork?
Brushy Fork,
Brushy Fork's what I heard.
yeah, that's what Rick has heard,
Yeah.
Brushy
Between
Fork.
Stony Run and the,
4-lane.
in the 4-lane,
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I mean, on that end.
And they've
though.
already
yes,
built, they built some stuff.
yes,
They
so,
got some tiny
little
you know,
stuff.
it,
I was thinking between there and the armory.
all of this comes into play when you're thinking about your facilities and providing what you need to educate our kids in the best way possible.
That's why a CEFP that's 10 years is truly a pipe dream
Yeah.
in some respects.
Sure,
You almost
sure.
need a 5-year CEFP.
Right, and no one ever thought that, of course, COVID was gonna hit. Who knew that we were gonna get in the middle of a pandemic where your supply chain was gonna get interrupted and everything else that happened? But that's the beauty of this plan. It can be modified, it can be redone, as we see things, needs and things change. That's the beauty of it.
And the state used to be very collegial about allowing it to be changed. Are they still that way?
Oh, I think
think
that
so,
Micah
yes.
and
I
the
think they
folks at the
happen
department.
relatively regularly.
Yes.
People are planning for their projects,
Yeah.
so they'll bump something up
Maybe
on their
3 years
CIP,
in
bump
and you
something
change
down.
it.
Yes.
And I'll say this, cause I've been through that process and did that in Barber County. And the key is that you include them in your plans
As you're
and let
moving-
them
as you're
know.
moving
And
forward.
then they come back with recommendations and say,
Yeah,
well, if
okay.
you do this, it would help. And so then you have guidance. And then by the time you get done with that and you get the changes ready and you submit them, they already know it's coming. So then it's just an automatic, yeah.
So I did not want to put forth anything to them yet.
Right.
Until I had the opportunity to speak with you all and let you have this very basic knowledge of some things that, we're thinking about and using what the current plan looks like. And then going to them and saying, here are some of our thoughts. Because Micah and the group at the department are very open, they'll look at facilities with us, they'll spitball ideas with us as well. I mean, they're very good at brainstorming. Mr. Neptune and Dana Womack and, I think it's Mark Miller that is who is assigned to this area for us from the SBA. They'll come anytime you ask them to, and they'll walk facilities with you. They'll talk through this, with us, and it's just important to kind of lay some of this groundwork and start thinking through some of these things as we're faced with declining enrollment and not knowing what's the enrollment going to continue to look like. And yes, 10 years is a long way out to project, but if you're already seeing this continuous decline, you've got to start, you've got to start being more proactive so that you don't end up in this reactive stage that you see a lot of these other counties going through. Now, the process, of course, of closures and things, it's very set in stone. We would have folks that would assist us through that. I'm going to go to a training that Bowles Rice is going to put on. I can't remember, they had to reschedule. I think it's been rescheduled for June.
Yeah.
But it's been a number of years since I've been through that entire process. And I would want to be very, very familiar with it again, because there have been just little subtle changes in it, but you've got to know what you're doing. And the biggest thing we can do right now is understand, okay, so here's where we are. Here's where we think we might have to start going towards, and start laying that foundation of understanding and with the public too, to get them to understand that while nothing is set in stone currently, these are just things that we have to be aware of, so we are being good stewards of the funding that we are given. So.
I'm just totally blown about even the middle school, enrollment. I mean, we had 1,200 kids there with no problem. I mean, that's significant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
On the demolition versus keeping part of the middle school, cause demolition's not cheap.
Not in that building.
That building's gonna be worse.
Yep.
Yeah, with the
Asbestos.
asbestos in there,
Yeah.
oh, that's gonna be
And,
expensive.
If it was not students, other than the roof, what kind of, this may be an unfair question, what kind of, upgrades or, not upgrades, renovations are needed?
Well, I've seen offices made out of classrooms before, and I don't know how pleasing that is. I mean, you can divide up a classroom pretty quickly. That's something that we can do in-house without too much trouble. That HVAC system, I was still here, but I'm gonna say it was probably in the 8th grade hallway, was probably 2015-ish. So, I mean, you're 10 years old, but it's got several years left. Those are rooftop units that'll cook along for a long time, I think.
As long as the roof holds it.
Well, that's true. So outside of the roof and inside aesthetics in the 8th grade side, now my mind went immediately when I heard, tear down the old section. Well, okay, but that new old section is attached to the old section.
Right.
And you got the cafeteria, it's piecemealed.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously it was added on to, so it can be, taken back away, but whether or not there's other things for academics, if you're gonna think about kids being on that campus, then I think you've gotta think about how you're gonna restructure that so that there is some separation between offices and classrooms. The 8th grade hallway is accessed from behind the cafeteria.
Right.
So, of course, you would wanna keep that big space, I would assume. Of course, and you mentioned gyms, so there's never enough gym space in a
I'm
county.
just, right off the top of my head, I'm wondering if it's more effective, cost-effective, beneficial, long-term, to keep the oldest section with a new roof without kids, and, or whatever the case may be, versus demolition.
You can
Well-
make that your board office.
That's what I'm meaning, yeah.
It is handicapped accessible.
I think
There's an elevator.
there'd have to be a whole lot more research into
Yeah.
your drainage pipes and all, cause that's expensive.
Yeah, the plumbing in that section is its biggest issue.
Yeah.
The roof on 3rd floor, I mean, it's okay right now.
I put special ed on third floor. That's where they always are.
Right.
That's where special
But
ed
there's
was
an
for
elevator
years
this time.
alone.
So
There is
they
an
did the
elevator.
6th grade teams they put up there then
Yeah,
after
then they
that.
put 6th grade, I remember that.
Very few people are up there now, they use more like pull-out
Offices,
service or
yeah.
office.
Office service.
I mean, I like to avoid demolition if we can.
And I don't know what the public perception of that old building will be.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's,
Right.
Hey, it was good enough for
Well,
me, so it
and
should be good enough for
There
them.
was a huge
That's
outcry
what you hear a
when
lot.
we started to look at 6th grade. Remember when there was that push to push 5th grade to the middle school? 5th graders were
Yes.
gonna go to
several
the middle
counties,
school.
went that route.
Yes.
There was a huge pushback for that. So I
Yeah.
foresee a pushback for 7th going to the high school
Oh, that's what I said,
with,
that's why.
without a real plan that they can
Exactly.
see.
Right.
Yes,
So
that's something that we would have to
we
work
would
on.
have to.
I mean, when you're talking about doing something like that, you have to start with your staff.
Yes.
That's where you start.
Mhm.
And you have to start having some really critical conversations with them first and foremost. and you have to have your messaging and your talking points and things ready to go. You've got to have your research done. You've got to bring your old guard in too. I mean, there's so much that goes into it, because when we decided to build the new East Fairmont Middle School, and I was the principal at East Fairmont Junior High School, I spent 2 years during the construction time building that comfortability about the way that the new building was designed. The 5th and 6th grade, it was done in a U on purpose, because the 5th and 6th grade was on the back side of that building, and 5th grade was on the bottom floor, and 6th grade was on the top, and there would be no mixing. You had one area for a cafeteria, but you even had separate play areas and outdoor space. You had to show scheduling.
But it is working. It's working
It
in
is.
Tiger Valley.
It is working in spaces, and it's just, the critical piece really is to start with your staff. And then you have to have those
Really
meetings
get
with
the public.
families, and you have to show them, and you have to demonstrate. And then it is so crucial when you open that space that everything that you said you were going to do actually happens and stays consistent and just keeps moving forward in the way you tell people it's gonna happen. And you
And that
can't,
did not happen
yes,
before, because people, even with the levy, and even with with the buildings, and then things changed without people knowing.
Right.
And it's like, you can't do that, you can't just add this thing on
no,
just because you choose to do it.
Correct.
On your own.
That
And
is
that's
correct.
kinda what happened. And
Yeah.
that was the big transparency issue
yes,
with that one, even before this one.
right.
But we have to think, because people still call it the new high school.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
1977.
77.
1977, and they call
Yeah.
it the
The year I
new
went to
high
high
school.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
That's not the new high school
Right,
anymore.
no, it is not.
If that's the
It is
case,
not.
I'm still 40.
I don't know exact numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that 62 million for a high school was, that I thought it was more like 72 at the time, but a middle school was somewhere in the upper 40s, lower 50s at the time, back in 2019.
Right.
They were gonna build.
The great
But the
thing,
bonus for a new
the great
middle
thing
school.
about this plan
It was
too
supposed
is,
to be.
I've already spoken to Greg Martin from Williamson Shriver, who helped with this project. He still has everything. Updating things would not be a difficult stretch. It would still require us to do a bid, because the project, with the scopes of everything, we'd still have to do a bid. But we do have access to things to assist us in anything that we would, decide to do. That, and I saw him at the career fair, as a matter of fact, the other day at Fairmont State, and I said, just want to put a bug in your ear about some things. And
I think they were at Charleston too. When we
yes,
were
they
there.
were.
I talked
And
to them a while.
yeah, and so he said, oh, yes, this is, I still have everything, and this is what we could do, and different things. And we were just going back and forth on some different things. So that's always great, that, that you can go back and you can look at some things. The unfortunate thing about when this was done is there are no notes from any meetings that were held or anything like that.
I'm sure.
So I don't know what all of those discussions were among all of those committees. Only what is appearing here is only what was put in the
The
plan.
documentation, the official document.
Yeah, so I don't know what those other conversations were. I've heard a lot of stories that people have shared with me, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it, like I would, like, say, for instance, Taylor County. But we also took notes every time a committee met, and that's in this notebook that we have there. So that kind of puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage. And but I do have names of folks that served on different committees here that also could provide some information,
I think, in building new facilities, I don't see that happening. I don't see the local support. And without the local support, I don't see the SBA providing support, unless it's safety related, like Templeton or something like that. But building new high schools and middle schools, and I don't see that ever happening, or even elementary schools. I don't see that happening. So I think we have to take a approach, work with what we've got, and, you know, adding a roof to the middle school, I think that needs to happen sooner than later, whether we use it for a school or whatever. I don't know how much that would be off the top of my head, no clue. But I know.
Millions.
Millions.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, but millions.
Yeah.
Oh, I figure. But I think
Amish boys over in Philippines do.
I think we need to be working towards that.
Yes.
Hey, they're cheap and they're good.
You know, there's funding available, unless it's going to be used for other items or reserves or whatever. We had over a $10 million unrestricted carryover balance. We've done journal entries for just over 2 million of that, so that leaves around $8 million of unrestricted
It's in the plastic.
balance at this point, if my math's correct. So I think we need to take a look
I don't know how much
at
they would have to go in.
roof at the middle school, and, cause it's gonna be used in some function, one way or the other, whether kids are there or not.
Right.
We're gonna be using that facility, or the majority of the facility. So I think we need to, this is Willie speaking, take steps to get some cost estimates, to know what we're talking about. And then I think working with, you know, the State Department, providing our thoughts as a local board to them, I think we need to take a look at closure of 2 middle school, or 2 elementary schools. Willie speaking, it's Brockhaven and Hodgesville off the top of my head. Based on numbers and locations and some of the factors that I know. And I'm not as familiar with the facilities as the other board members, because some of them I've just been in the front door and that's it.
Yeah.
But, you know, Hodgesville's in the floodplain for one thing. We're spending $12,000 a year on flood insurance for 2 different vendors. Don't understand 2 different vendors, but neither here nor there. And we're only insuring it for $2.3 million. You're not going to replace that facility for $2.3 and only $55,000 on contents. Yeah. So yeah, those numbers are out of whack. So I think that's what we need to take and, you know, if we look at a 5th, 6th grade location, where would that be?
That's what I wanted to know, where would that be?
Don't know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just-
it's just something that,
Yeah.
If
you
it-
know,
if it
that
could be,
consideration, where
Yeah.
could we do that?
If it could be, where would it be?
Where, and it'd have to be centrally located, it'd have to be
Yeah.
here
Yeah,
in
'cause those
Buchanan.
fifth
So,
graders come
yeah,
up,
that's,
parents are gonna throw a fit.
Yeah.
You better get the parents on board.
And how
because
I
much-
it's
just
gonna
wanna
happen.
say one
I
thing.
understand you better get
You
the
can't
parents
just
involved.
throw them out.
I think the parents would be happier with that than they would be having their 6th grader going to the high school.
Oh, well.
oh, yeah,
But I think
Yeah.
here's the situation, and I'm just gonna throw this out, because all the trainings we've done over the years, both of us, not together. You know, I did have an opportunity to go to one training, and a superintendent spoke, and he tried to go through the exact same things we're doing. Failed 3 times in a row. He was ready to quit. And so he, in a fit of anger, in front of a bunch of parents, he said, "That's fine, you guys tell me what to do." And then from there, after everybody calmed down, he came back and he got a handful of anti-levy, anti-anything education, handful of teachers, handful of bus drivers, handful of supporting parents, handful of business owners. Divided them up. They met one night every 2 weeks for 6 weeks, and they would be there for no more than 1 to 1.5 hours. And they were all divided up equally, so that, you know, you had a mix of everybody in every group. And just like we're doing, there was a finance table, a transportation table, a maintenance table, and they just just simply explained how things worked, and this is our problems, and this is how much money we've got. What can we do? And they said, we don't want any ideas right now, we're giving it to you. After 6 weeks, then they broke them up again into other groups, brainstorm, all that. Superintendent, all he did every time was walk in, thank you for being here, go get it. And he left, he didn't even stay. And after 6 weeks, they came together, and he was shocked. He walked into the meeting to start the meeting, and they were all there early, and he didn't know it. And the most anti-person in the room, been in the paper, wanting him fired and all that, stood in front of everybody and said, first thing we're gonna do is apologize to you. We had no idea. Now we understand. Do we agree with everything we wanna do? No, but we have to do something. And they presented a plan, and it was a larger plan than they'd ever dreamed of, and they passed it and got it all. And so, with our current situation, I agree with you all. If we don't get the community on board, it doesn't matter what you wanna do. You're just gonna be stuck. So you're gonna have to just make hard, difficult decisions and make everybody more angry. But maybe we think of something like that. I'm not saying that's the way to go, but I think that that's how you build those relationships and get people back on our side. You know, we're trying our best to do things right, be financially responsible, make accurate decisions. But even to sit here and say we need to close the school, I'm not sure, don't know yet. We just don't know, because it's so early. You know, what else can we do? And there may be an idea out there that none of us ever come up with, and somebody else gives it to us, and wow, what a great idea.
Well, and I think that's the next phase of
I
this.
do too.
It's almost
Information
like
here,
a mini CEFP.
right, but information to them first.
Right.
Right,
Then
Right.
start thinking about, you know, let's
Right.
think about moving forward with, okay, let's start getting some groups together, and let's start getting
Right.
this information out there, and because that's how a lot of the projects have been done in many of these
That's
communities,
how it
Right.
needs to be done.
you know.
How much would it save by closing down 1 or 2 schools? How much would it save us?
Cost estimates to close Rock Cave, just as an example, because that's just where I started. Cost estimates to close it could save us upwards of $6.5 million.
That speaks volumes to
Wow.
community.
Yes.
Could we also have, I know you were giving us the background with the CEFP of where we were with enrollment and where we are now. I think it's important for the community to understand what the enrollment could be. If we were at 100% efficiency using that building, how many kids could Rock Cave
Yes,
hold?
yes.
200?
Sure we can. Yeah, we could, yes,
Right.
we can do that, because I think that's important data for them to have in their hands, so that they can look at it, because they can grab a hold of that.
Because the CEFP was just projecting.
Yes, it was just a simple projection.
So it was a
and-
simple projection. We need to be able to say, right now, we've got 132 at that
Yes.
school, but that school could hold
Yes.
Yes,
222 students, so that they
Yes.
see we're 80 students off,
right.
yes,
which is
yes,
four classrooms.
yes, it is,
At a
and
school
and
that
it is,
size.
that, you're right, it is significant. And the other thing is, I want to do that. I do want to say that I want to wait till the legislative session is over with. We are getting applications for more students to partake in using the Hope Scholarship. Because before you start throwing figures out to folks and maintaining the transparency, you do have to have those numbers as well, so that they can see. But then you also have to start asking yourself some pretty hard questions. What is it that we are not doing as a public school system that is causing people to say, that's a better deal for me, and it's better for my kids to be here rather than with you? So, you know, this just isn't about facilities and what we can or cannot do. We've got to start taking a hard look at ourselves as well. And I will say this, I think that we have the right people here in the positions right now to continue that conversation, because it's already started. And we're having some hard conversations. And high expectations and accountability. It begins with everyone as an individual, but then has to become collective. And until
That's what was missing.
until the public in Upshur County as a whole sees that accountability and expectations are going to be in place and remain that way, and everybody's going to be talking the same thing, and the outcomes are going to continue to show an improvement, it really doesn't mean a whole lot.
No.
Because it's empty words again, and this community is tired of empty words
Absolutely. And I
and
can
false
tell you,
promises.
I can tell you 2 reasons, because I talk to these people, and I know you all do too. And one of the reasons that they pull their children out is they're not educated. They're not being educated, and whenever they go to college, these parents have to pay for tutors and all to get a student that was a 4.0 in high school and can't even pass an English class or a math class in college. And so they are really upset because our grade scores are in the toilet. They're just in the toilet. I don't care if it was 1 or 2%, they're in the toilet.
Yes,
And parents expect and should expect much, much better.
But our grades
Then what
are
we
high
can-
on their grade cards.
Yeah.
There,
It
and we
reflects-
realize this.
Inflated, exactly.
We realize
Yes.
this, that the rigor is not there,
No, it's not.
and
It's mediocrity.
it is.
I
and-
believe it's less than that.
Accepting me, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
There's that.
Yes,
It's-
so you are,
Yes.
you are spot on.
Another reason that I hear is their child being bullied or harassed
And the
and
lack of discipline.
nothing being done about it, and they have this fear in them that to send their child to where they should be safe, they're being hurt. Not only physically hurt, which mentally and emotionally hurt, that leaves a whole lot more scars and lasts a lot longer
Yes.
than the physical. And we've got to get a handle on this.
Yep.
This has got to stop.
It's like when I presented to the state board, and I'm sure that they probably look at me and go, what planet does she live on? But I do dose them with reality.
Right?
I do. I dose them with reality every time I'm there. But the bottom line is the test scores are what everybody sees, and that is how we're measured.
Yes,
I mean,
indeed.
good, bad, or indifferent, that is how we are measured, plus the other metrics that are put there before
Right.
us. When I came last year, it was all about procedural things that were, I don't know another way to put it, but illegal, because they were. Things that were done were not done legally. And that's where we concentrated, but we still got a little smattering of the curriculum kind of thing that we went up a little bit. Well, if we didn't concentrate on that last year and we still improved a little bit, that means that we have it within us to continue to make that climb.
There's no doubt in
But
my mind.
the focus has to be where the focus needs to be. We feel that we're making progress, and how we're seeing that is in these data meetings that we have monthly with our principals. Them beginning to hold their instructional staff accountable.
Yes.
If they're not meeting our standards, then we have ways to help them. We have focused support plans, and that is about supporting a person to be better. We have corrective action plans for those that we see are not going to make it, but we're still going to support them and try to help them get there. But in the past, those were not utilized to their potential. We finally have people who are understanding that we have these systems to support those folks, and we've got to start using them, because we have to own whether we are improving or not.
Yes.
Each individual that's in a classroom, that's a custodian, a bus driver, a cook, a secretary, everybody in this office has to own it personally first, but then they have to get on board and help make those changes that they know need to happen. I see it, and I don't think I think I'm right. I think I'm right. Mr. DeRico, you're on he's on the leadership team, and I see it.
Absolutely.
You have to.
But we've got to keep it.
Yes.
Those
Yes.
tangible things we can
Yes.
see, but those intangible things that we cannot,
Right.
but still have an impact on what's happening
we've gone up steps,
We have,
but there's more steps ahead of
there
us.
certainly
Yes.
is.
But if you have a junior or senior in high school that has dreams, that has a plan, that far reaches what the educational system is giving to them at that high school, then that's when a parent
Yes,
needs to step in,
yes.
and regardless of where they're from. And I know McCann and Upshur love it, love it, love it, love it. But there comes a time where I have to put my focus as a parent on my child, not my loyalty to this county, but I have to put it on my child and what's best for my child and my child's future. That's my job, is to take care of my child and make sure my child gets the best that they can have that's available. And if that means I have to take them out of county, then that's what you have to do. If you focus on your child, that's what you have to do. Those parents, and it's plural, that I know that has done this, once they moved out of the child out of county, they too had to then get tutors to bring their child up in that other county because they were so far behind the grade level that what they was in. I was embarrassed. I was totally embarrassed.
Yes.
Not only high school students, but elementary school students.
Yes.
When you're in the 4th grade and you've never had a spelling test, there's something's wrong with this picture. And reading comprehension, that ought to get you, Susan King. You're in the 4th grade,
Maybe, I know.
and you can't even tell what a teacher, what the components of a book is, or at least start out.
Main idea, characters,
yeah.
come on. Yeah.
But both the students that I know were 4.0s in Upshur County. Now that's sad, people. I don't just care. That's sad, and my heart breaks for this county. It breaks for this
And
county.
when you lower your standards in
Oh,
the
geez.
classroom, the kids who are down here, yes, they look like they're raising up, but then the kids who are above that, they're actually
You're
coming
just-
down.
yeah.
And so it's not even a happy medium.
It's a sad
It
situation.
is.
And
Yeah,
who
that's-
suffers? Our children. Our children across the board.
So we're working on changing the
I'll get
focus
off
from
that
adults.
soapbox,
No, you're
yeah.
fine. We're working on changing the focus from adults to our kids. I'm seeing
Yes.
improvement. Like I said, if I were 10 years younger, oh my gosh, I'd sell that house and I'd move here because I'm in it to win it, folks. And
Yeah.
I have a sense of urgency that's probably different than anybody else's. And I probably drive people in this office crazy because I'd be going and asking questions like, well, why aren't we? Well, how come we're not? That's just who I am. But I want the best. And I mean
Yes.
the best for
Yes.
every kid in this county. I didn't sit at my computer last night and figure out how to modify based on an alternative standard for a young lady because, okay, well, yeah, I'll half it. No,
No.
I was in it for that child.
Yes.
And that's what I have to get from every employee in this county. And we're working towards it.
Yes.
And I think we're taking huge steps in that manner. It's just simply saying, we need everyone to be present. That means where you're supposed to be,
Yes.
when you're supposed to be there, prepared, and going for your excellence, going for excellence.
Exactly.
3 simple things, but that is what we're working.
We're failing, but
We're
now I
failing,
think
but we're working.
we're failing, but we're pushing the
Yes.
agenda to have, and for those people that are in that classroom that is in charge of that education,
Yes.
then leadership. If that education is not, and they know, if it's not meeting standards in the way it should, then that administration should be in there and saying, why not? How can I help you? How do we improve this situation? Because I want to see improvement in the next 6 weeks. How can we do that? They need to be, I
That's
know
what
it's
we're doing.
tough.
We've moved there, but we're moving there. We
We've
saw that
got
the
to
last
do
day of
it.
the meetings. We saw that. And in fact, I've got 2 people out helping right now do focus support plans from this office.
Good.
They're out there helping. we all know that's a tough conversation, but guess what? We gotta have them.
We have to have them.
We've gotta have them.
We have to.
We have to. So, anywho.
I think that you gave us a lot of information on facilities, Mr. DeRico, and I appreciate that. And I know that you're working hard to rubber band and spitball
glue.
everything together. Super glue.
You're real good at
Duct tape.
spitballs. I like
Duct
the
tape.
Oh, yeah. That's the answer to all things.
FC Liquidators had it on sale. Big rolls, $5 if you need it.
Well, I don't think we drop this conversation is what
No.
I'm going to say. I think we continue to move forward. We continue to discuss this. We start thinking about addressing things with the community. We start, thinking about those folks that we need to bring together to start having those kinds of conversations. Internally, we keep pushing the academic side and the support side while we are, but while we still are working on this as well.
Well, and I'm gonna speak for all of us. I think that all 5 of your board members will be more than happy to be on whatever.
Whatever
If
committee
we
you
are
need us on.
a help and not seen as a part of the problem, I think that all 5 of us would be happy to be on whatever groups you need us
Yes.
on.
I
Yes.
agree.
Wouldn't you agree,
I would,
guys?
Yes.
I would.
Absolutely.
I think we need to, be moving this forward sooner instead of later. All components, whatever, we're looking at the components of elementary, 1, 2 schools, whatever, middle school, here, there, wherever, 5, 6, here, there, wherever. Probably not all gonna happen at once.
Right.
No.
Right.
Let's see Nick Reynolds' face the day we tell him that it's gonna happen all at once.
Right.
But part of this is, unless this local board's in control, the state department's, gonna have to be willing to move. I don't know if they're willing to look at closing schools or not, but,
They are.
we need to look at closing some schools next year.
I don't disagree with you.
That's not a 2 or 3 year plan, that's next year. Now, the 5, 6, maybe a couple years, or the middle school out a couple years, but we're not looking at a 4, 5, 6 year plan, we're looking at a 2-year plan.
Right now.
Yeah,
Right.
and we're looking at middle school, or elementary schools next year, which means starting now.
Yep.
To meet all the deadlines and have a plan put together that, involving the community, getting their support up front, getting their input up front, whether you get their support or not, you need to get their input. But, that's my concern of getting moving now and getting that plan put together. And, whoever from the State Department we need to involve, we need to get involved. Because the board and the administration can have the best plans, whatever, and the community support, but if the State Department, they don't want to do anything, it's not gonna happen.
The State Department statewide is promoting
School closures.
school closures
Yes.
to maximize facilities and certifications, is what I've seen.
Yes.
But, our student population, if we maintain our current levels, we'll be extremely lucky.
Yes. You're right.
It's, we might as well plan on decline.
When does the Hope
Yeah.
Scholarship close?
I don't know. Because it's gonna be different for this coming school year. Last school year, only those that were entering kindergarten were eligible to apply and receive the Hope Scholarship. This year, it opens up to everyone. And they did not have to spend 45 days in a public school before they could apply for Hope this time.
And that's gonna hurt our funding, because that has to come out of the county's funds.
It won't,
And they keep-
so we have a good idea of what funding's going to look like for next year.
Right.
It will, because remember it lags, it'll be the following year that the funding
Yes.
would
Hurts
be
us.
impacted.
Right.
So, but again, that goes back to exactly what Mrs. Dean was saying this morning. The academic side, though, we have to continue to push.
We have
We have to continue on down that trajectory of the
Yes.
urgency of the changes that are needed.
And that's what the public sees.
Mm-hmm.
They don't
That's
see,
exactly right.
they
There've
don't
been a
see
number
us,
of
but that's what they see.
There've been a number of questions. I know I've had two people ask me if they have a way to look at the Christian schools'
Yes.
state testing versus our state testing.
I don't know,
Funds,
because
and
private
they don't-
schools are under different rules.
Yeah, they don't have to do,
Right.
They're under
they
different
don't have
rules.
to do our testing.
Right.
They make it, yeah.
Well, my answer was, I believe it's apples and oranges that you're trying to
Absolutely.
compare.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to help you
No.
to do
And
that.
I would
So
have
the kids at the Christian
Is it-
school don't do state testing like we do?
They can, unless it's changed, they can
You know?
participate if they choose. And we had some, when I was in here, when I was Title I, that would do it.
But do
Because
the
I was
Christian
also,
school kids come to the county to do it, or do they test
no,
at the
well, they
Christian
tested
school?
their sites.
Okay.
They did, but then when they, I don't know how to say this, but when they saw their scores from the state test, that's when they decided we're not doing it anymore.
And they can choose to use their own
Yeah, and they can
own
use,
tests. I mean,
Any
they can
Stanford-
choose any standardized test
Yes,
that they
but are
Yeah.
choose.
they
They can choose their own curriculum.
Well,
They're
you can't
comparable to-
compare
yeah,
two
well,
different
yeah, two
tests.
different tests.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, they're not
Two
comparable
different
to
standards.
what.
And it depends on the school.
Yeah.
Right.
It depends on the school.
Right. Coming from a family member that homeschools, they did state testing yesterday and they had to go to the board office
Mm-hmm.
and do their state testing there. And I will say that fourth grader was reading on a 8th grade level.
And that's because the parents chose to do that. They don't have to.
No, well, I don't
They can
know.
do, I don't know, if they still can just do a
No.
portfolio?
Yes,
No,
homeschool.
no.
Yeah.
Homeschool can.
This,
Homeschool.
this is a different state.
Oh,
This different state.
well,
I
but in
know
ours,
that
I'm
they-
just looking at our state.
Yeah, they,
We have so
they
many
are
kids
doing that,
homeschooled
and maybe we need to push with legislature and say, okay, well, homeschool, and I understand homeschool.
So the
But they
Superintendent's
do state
Association
testing. Yeah,
did
but
get
they're
a
not going
delegate
to.
to introduce a bill to
To
do
do-
those very
They don't
things.
care about homeschool.
To tighten up the reins around homeschool in West Virginia, one
Yeah.
of the things was assessment.
Yes.
Is
so
in that
they-
bill.
We
I
need
don't
to,
know if it has any traction,
because
but
that's
at least
gonna
it got
be
introduced.
what's best for the student,
Yes,
because how are they gonna compete?
that's right. Mr. Parker, I'll continue the movement forward. We will, here as a group.
I mean, one thing middle school roof, I think we need to be getting quotes and that's, putting that out there. It's not that expensive to get to the quote stage.
Doesn't cost us anything to do
Quotes
quotes.
are usually
Yeah.
Well, we would have to involve an architect in that.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to involve an architect and do some
That's-
advertising, other than
We
that,
have a
it's not that
contract with
much.
Williams Driver for that.
Yes, I know.
It's just, that's something that needs
And
to
then we have to
happen.
go to the
And I've had that
SBA and ask for
discussion
money,
with
because we
them.
don't have the money.
Greg mentioned that.
Softly.
That's,
I mean-
Greg mentioned that the other day when
We
I
don't
saw
have
that.
the
Mention
money
what?
in our county to pay
The-
for it.
Our
Well, we've got
architect.
$8 million
contracted
of
with Williams
unrestricted
Driver.
funds.
Right.
I've talked with them about that roof.
What we're gonna
They're
do with
familiar
those.
that it's an issue for us.
Right.
You don't spend it all, you keep it in
Oh, you
reserve. The
can't.
state requires you
You
to
can't
keep
spend it.
money in reserve.
I understand, we had 26% reserve and a 5% is healthy, according to what we had in our meeting. So I don't wanna be sitting on $8 million and our roof leaking.
True.
All right.
Is there anything else to come before? Comments, concerns, or questions on facilities? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mrs. Dean, second.
Second.
Mr. Parker. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 11:29.
Are we off? Are we off?
Mr.